You're listening to the Money Pig Podcast, brought to you by Goodwin Investment Advisory, where our mission is to lead people to financial peace, independence, and generosity. I'm your host, Reid Trego, and this week I am joined again by Ray Brown, certified financial planner professional. Congratulations.
Wow, we can officially say it now. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate that. It's great to be back.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
You like yesterday, May 8th. 2024
it's official.
Is the day you're officially all in CFP, have your marks.
Finally checked that last requirement, that last rigorous box to get the full accreditation. And yeah, now it's done. So very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. That's great. You are now officially more qualified than I am.
Oh, I don't know about that. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's good. So thought we'd put your new certification to the test here. But a question about HSAs.
Yes.
Health savings accounts. And very honestly, this came up because I just became eligible for one. But this is a really good topic that I think mystifies a lot of people. It's a little unclear how it works. So health savings accounts, we want to just start out and talk a little bit about what they are, who's eligible for them, and how this works.
I love it. It's a great thing. You're right. It's on a lot of people's mind. We get a lot of questions about this. I actually just helped my parents as well go through it because they had they were eligible. And so we went through those, a couple of little things you got to some boxes you got to check and get it all set up. So HSA, it's a health savings account. It is, in my mind, what I call the best tax advantaged account. The best one that exists.
Ooh,
this is top dog. Better than a Roth IRA, better than any other account vehicle vessel that exists.
I love it.
Okay,
let's talk about that in a second. But we don't want people to confuse HSA with an FSA, flexible spending account. That is also healthcare related.
Yes.
But it works differently.
Yep. FSA, the flex spending account, that is the tricky one. That is the one you may hear people talk about. It's the use it or lose it. That's the one that expires. You've got to use the cash within the year. HSA, completely different. It's more of a long-term planning vehicle. You're not going to lose those benefits. They can roll over year to year. You keep this thing going. Fund it like a Roth IRA. It's going to continue to grow. And very important distinction there. I'm glad you brought that up.
Awesome. And you were just going to say why you love this
Why
HSA.
We call this the best account type that exists is just because of the tax treatment. And so it is the best tax advantaged account. And those three, it's the trifecta. It's 3 reasons. It's tax deduction when you put the money in. So it's an above the line deduction on the assets as they're going into the account, kind of like a traditional 401k. When you defer money into it, you get that deduction.
Reduces your taxable income.
Absolutely. So we love that. So it's a tax deduction on the front end. Then the money lives in the account and it grows tax deferred, just like an IRA would. So you're not responsible for any of those gains. Obviously how you've invested it, it's going to grow year to year, month to month, but it doesn't matter to you. You're not getting a tax bill each year for that gain. Third, the best part is tax-free withdrawals from the account. Those distributions from the account are tax-free as well, as long as, here's the asterisk, you use it for qualified medical expenses.
Well, we're all going to have those.
Absolutely. If one thing is certain, it's medical. I was going to say death and taxes, but also medical expenses.
Yeah, true.
So that's the trifecta. It's tax deduction on the front end, tax deferred during your lifetime, and tax free as you pull the money out for those medical expenses. And so really it is we talk a lot about Roth IRAs and how they, you put the money in. Of course, you don't get the tax deduction up front when you put money into a Roth IRA, but it's going to grow and grow and grow. It's the compounding on compounding on compounding for years. When you go to pull the money out, it's all tax-free. And so it's like, well, gosh, this thing has quadrupled since from what I initially put into the account. And so the same approach is true with the HSA. You put the money in, it's going to grow, it's going to get much, much, much bigger. And as long as you're using that for medical, you get to end up pulling out a lot more money than what you initially put in there, all tax-free.
Great. And this is how in past years, past life or whatever, I was not eligible for an HSA. And a lot of people aren't, but they're like, why not? It sounds like such a great deal. Why can't everybody have an HSA? Yeah. So talk about eligibility.
That is true. And this is one of those things that I wish it was open for more people. Would certainly love to be able to offer it for more folks. But yes, in order to participate, you do have to have what's called a high deductible health plan. You may see it abbreviated on your insurance card. Sometimes they'll say HDHP, high deductible health plan. That's kind of the criteria to make sure you're in. If you have medical insurance, you've got to have a plan that will allow this. And that's just one of those IRS regulations. If you've got a low deductible health insurance, then they're not going to want you to be using this vehicle. And so this is truly, it's an account that's geared towards folks that like, hey, if you have minimal medical expense, a lot of people kind of self-insure themselves medically through something like this. They pick the cheapest health insurance plan through their employer. Thus, it has a high deductible. Thus, the extras and premium that they would be paying for a better plan, a lower deductible plan, or a no deductible plan, they can kick it into this HSA. So it's like, how often do you use your insurance? What are you pulling from it? If you're one of those people that's like, gosh, we never use this thing, we're paying a fortune for insurance, boost yourself up to a higher deductible plan if it's offered, and that makes you eligible to open the HSA account.
Amazing. I was always wondering, like, why is it only for people with high deductible plans? But that actually makes pretty good sense.
Yeah, I might have to ask the IRS on that one. I don't know why. I mean, why not, well, I guess it's because, they're not making any taxes on any of it. And so, we'd prefer you not do this. Yeah.
Okay. So then one of the things, I actually had an HSA probably 20 years ago, long time ago. And I did then what I think about 96% of people do. They just use it as a clearinghouse. They make that contribution every month. And then the next month, their child goes to the doctor and they take that money. They just swipe the HSA debit card. Right?
Yes.
It's just a clearinghouse. Back then, I was in a totally different industry. I didn't understand that it had such growth potential. I don't remember hearing anyone say, they probably told me, but I don't remember hearing them say, you ought to just fund this and it'll grow for the rest of your life. Oh, yeah.
Why would they tell you that? Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're right, Reid. I mean, I truly say that, no exaggeration here, I would say at least once per week, I'm meeting with a client and we say, please stop using the HSA to reimburse yourself for Band-Aids.
Oh my gosh. Really?
This is not right? One of those things you go to CVS, you're at the pharmacy and it's like, you'll see these products. It's like HSA eligible. And it's like, the same is true, I guess, for FSA. You'll see like FSA, HSA, use it up. And so even like doctors, co-pays, it's like, use your HSA card. And I like to approach this like anything in this finance world with a sense of like strategy and planning. We always revert back to the word planning. Why the heck are we putting money into here? What's it ultimately for? And so you're absolutely right. You could definitely use it as a conduit. You could put $1,000 a month in there and use that to pay for all your family's medical expenses. But now if you do that, you've killed what I call the golden goose. This account is the golden goose. It's laying that egg for the future. And you've got snowballing happening inside this account. It's growing. And like I said, there's compounding on compounding on compounding. So if you go pull out your $50 copay to reimburse yourself now, you've just stolen from that potential growth opportunity of allowing that $50 to multiply over the years. Yeah.
And so let's talk about that because I wanted to look at this at different stages of life, just kind of starting out working, young parents, and then as we're maybe getting to empty nester and pre-retirement.
Yeah. Great point.
Yeah. So as a new starting out, 25, 24-year-old has a job, has eligibility for an HSA. If they do, then, I mean, what can they contribute? How often? And then how would they want to invest that?
Yeah. Great question to look at. Again, I love it. And you got your head in the right spot there, Reid. So we got to look at the why. Why are we doing this and what's it all about? And so a very important thing to think about. I think if you're in like that age group you mentioned, the 25 or even older, no matter how old you are when you're listening to this, if it's HSA is new to the table for you, I think the very first thing you have to ask yourself is, what strategy am I? There's a fork in the road and you've got to decide which route are you taking. Do you do the Ray approach? And the approach we most often recommend here for our clients where it's, we want this to be used for our healthcare expenses down the road. We never want to pull from this account unless an absolute emergency. That's my parenthetical there. But ultimately, we want to save this money. We want it to grow tax-free. We want it to multiply and snowball so that we can use it later in life when healthcare expenses are higher and more dramatic. One thing is certain, we will all pay Medicare premiums down the road. If I could design this from scratch, and if I'm working with a young couple or, hey, again, even my parents, just recently talking to them about this, let's design this, let's strategize. I would love for you to pay for the Band-Aids out of your checking account or another investment vehicle. Pay yourself back from a different account. don't touch this HSA, protect the golden goose. And so we want that to reimburse yourself for those Medicare premiums that are certain in the future. So if you're young, 25, just starting out or just hearing about all of this, decide on that approach. Do you have ample cash flow or other investments that can support your healthcare costs in the present? If the answer is yes, then you're the perfect candidate to skyrocket this thing forward. If you've been on this high deductible health plan, you've got expensive medical costs, you're spending 10 grand or plus a year, and oh my gosh, like we rely on this account for those premiums, you're not the best candidate to approach this strategy. It's like you probably are relying on some of that investment growth and those contributions as a conduit. You're putting money in, you're pulling it out because your expenses are higher. But if you're young or you're in a position where you've got other assets, please use those other assets first. Pay for your medical expenses out of that. Continue contributing to that HSA while you're eligible, while you're working, and use that fund in the future to reimburse yourself for medical expense.
Awesome. And I think you might have just alluded to this, but even if you can't you need this money sooner rather than waiting and letting it grow. Even if you're going to be the clearinghouse investor, it's still worth contributing, taking the deduction, and then using that debit card, even though ideally you don't. I mean, but that's what like 95% of people do. So
yeah, people do it. And it's like, hey, you just got to decide for yourself. If you're in the 20s, 30s, decide, is this going to be, am I trying to pay the least amount in medical expenses over my entire lifetime? Then if so, pursue that strategy, figure out at all means necessary, figure out a way to get those expenses covered anywhere but the HSA. And the reason is you just don't want to kill the compounding. Let that sucker grow. Use it for the future when it's going to be bigger.
All right. Here's another question. Your recommendation. I've heard you say, especially in your early 20s, people need to be setting aside 15% of their income into the long-term savings. Beautiful. And build these emergency funds and all this. Does the HSA contribution count toward that recommended 15% savings rate?
It's a great question. No, it's a really, really, really great question. I think it all depends on, that magic number is just an industry standard around just investing for your future, for your retirement. I think it boils down to how wealthy do you want to be? It certainly could. However, we know that saving 15% in an HSA, it's like, well, that's going to be, there's going to be two expenses that you need in the future later on in life. It's obviously, yes, those medical expenses, which would be great to have. But aside from that, how are we going to live? You're also taking those ordinary lifetime distributions that you're going to need to live on. So it's important to look at a few different vehicles, I think. And this is something an advisor can help sit you down and let's draw out some buckets. How much are we kicking into the 401k? How much goes into the Roth IRA? Are we doing backdoor Roth? Let's kick a little bit into the HSA and make sure we're kind of spreading the wealth over these buckets to serve us in the most tax advantaged way in the future. We always tell folks, our goal, we want to pay the least amount of tax over our entire lifetime or our joint lifetime if we're considering ourselves and a spouse. So how do we make that happen? So I think that's a great approach.
Amazing.
I skipped over your question, Reid. You had asked about the contribution limits. And so
this is one of those, back to that.
Yeah, this is one of those numbers. It's like a lot of the numbers. We flat out say, hey, we refuse to memorize these numbers because they change every single year. It's updated just like the tax brackets. So each year the IRS publishes those new limits. So these are the 2024 numbers. And there's actually two different types of HSA plans. You can set up an individual account, which is just for a single solo person. Perhaps you're a single tax filer. Or they have a family plan. So this would be if you're married filing joint, or if you've got kids, you're eligible to open up a family HSA.
Does that mean who is covered under that high deductible insurance
That's
plan?
correct. Okay. That's correct. And the same as well as who's deemed eligible for those tax-free distributions on the qualified medical expenses. So in an individual plan right now, the limit's $4,150. That's for 2024, like I said. And then for the family plan, it's basically double. It's $8,300 this year. If you're over age 55, similar to a Roth IRA here, they allow you to contribute an extra $1,000. So if you're, a little bit later in life, 55, you got maybe, for 10 years until Medicare kicks in, how can I, make sure that my Medicare doesn't come out of my pocket. I don't want it taken out of my Social Security later in life. You could throw the absolute max right now, $8,300 plus the extra $1,000. So that's $9,300 total for 2024. You could defer that from your income, take advantage of the tax deduction on the front end. That's an above the line deduction from your income in that year that you're making the contribution. Boom, $9,300 goes in. Let that grow, let that compound. You've just prepaid your Medicare for several years. If you look at it like that, come 10 years from now, boom, that money's going to have doubled if invested correctly and over, with some assumptions there on growth. Boom, pay yourself back for those Medicare premiums that you're, we're 100% chance we're going to have those.
Yeah, that's amazing. And even for somebody under 55 or no, younger, 25, then they're putting $8,300 a year into this account. If they use it and invest it and pick good, reasonable, just be the market.
Absolutely.
Then you turn 65, you start on Medicare, you pay those premiums, but whatever other expenses you have. Oh,
yeah.
geez,
And there's, I know it's great. It's all about strategy. It's all about planning and the what and the why. And so, yeah, it's important to say, oh, I'm not just going to sign up for this account because it's an employer benefit. It's more so it makes sense for me to put the money in these buckets because XYZ. And for myself, for my family, our approach is very much, we know we're going to have Medicare premiums down the road, and I don't want that coming out of my Social Security income stream, or I don't want to have to take money out of my investment accounts to pay those premiums. If they can be completely tax-free and it can also be paid for with the tax-free growth, it's not my money paying for my Medicare. I've got free health coverage for life, and I love that. I love that strategy.
This reminds me of the DAF, the Donor Advised Fund, right? Yeah. Where you can make a contribution to a donor advised fund or like a charitable account. It's your own personal charitable account. It's like you're giving it to a 501c3. It's deductible from your taxes as long as you're itemizing, which a lot of people don't right now because the standard deduction is so high, but it's different issue. But the DAF does the same thing. You put the money in, it's invested, pretty conservatively, I think, but it's invested and it grows. Like I put money in, I've given away more than I put in, and there's still money in there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And see, I love stuff like this where it's like, and I get it. It depends on everyone's personal situation. Maybe cash flow is a little tight in your budget currently, and it's like, hey, we totally get that. But if there's a windfall, and this is something my wife and I did, we're like, college costs are crazy. And so it's like, as we're running scenarios, it's like, wow, we're young, we're in our early 30s. We don't have children yet. We're not yet talking about it, but we know in the future we'd like to. And when we have a kid and we fast forward 18 years, college costs can just take $200,000 to put a kid through 4 years of college in the state of Georgia. Gosh, that's a lot of money. But then we also have that observation of like, what if we just put 10 grand aside for this right now?
I know.
The rule of 72 says, hey, if it's earning 10% return, it's going to double in just 7 years.
Yep.
Let that do the trick. 7 years from now, it doubles. 7 years from there, that number then doubles again. Let's do it one more time. That's going to triple. And so therefore, it's just like, man, using like anything else in investing, it's that time value of money. The earlier you start, the better. I could put that max limit in there right now and consider my healthcare in the future taken care of.
Right.
Absolutely great.
Amazing. Okay, let's move a little beyond where I am. Let's go to the just getting ready to retire HSA holder.
Yeah.
Okay, they've been contributing. Here we are. They're getting ready to retire. What do they need to know?
Yeah, this brings up two really, really great points. The first is if you're getting ready to retire, you're getting close to that age 65-ish range. One important thing happens. Do you know what it is, Reid?
No.
Time's up. You actually lose the eligibility to contribute to the HSA. So this is something that we can do. So you're on that like final countdown of, I know you're not close to 65 just yet.
At 65, you can't contribute anymore?
That's correct. Oh. So yeah, that's just the way that it works there in that regard. So once you, once you're on Medicare, you're no longer eligible to contribute to the HSA. So it's just that classic like deadline. One other deadline to think about, and I'm so sorry, this is not at all answering your question, but we're going to get there. The other deadline is just, when can I kick the money in there? And it's like a Roth IRA. You've got until tax day to fund it for the prior year. So say today was April 1st, we could still kick in a contribution for last year as well as the current year. I could do a 2023 and a 2024. Say I just won the lottery and I've got this cash that just hit my account. And I go, what do I do? Let's fund 2 years worth, last year and this year. But it goes away, of course, there at the thing. So Awesome. Back to your question, Reid, sorry, is just that, as you approach retirement, I think it works just like any other investment. We start looking at what are some ways to let off the gas a little bit on the investment growth to preserve the cash in the account so that it can be used for those those expenses.
The expenses that you know are coming and you don't want to put that money at risk,
my
right?
gosh,
so you want to avoid the volatility.
Yeah, it's COVID. Markets are down 20%. My HSA is down 20%. Oh, now what?
Right.
Medicare, you don't want to sell investments when they're at a low. And so I think just like anything else, perhaps, in your earlier years, you're invested more aggressively. I would personally invest S&P 500. Just put in a simple, basic. It doesn't need to be super complex or diversified. Again, we're thinking long-term strategy. So, hey, throwing the money in now, I'm not going to look at this thing for 20, 30 years. Full on aggression. We don't care what the stock market does today, tomorrow, next week, or even next year. We don't care the elections coming up. None of that matters right now. Just put the money in there, game on, full gas pedal. And then we reduce that as we get a little older in life. We start looking at more of a balanced, blended, strategy, perhaps 60% in the stock market, 40% fixed income, a little more moderate of an approach. And we roll from there.
But this is not specific personal financial advice because we won't want to get in trouble with compliance here. But we don't know whatever your particular situation is. So I can't give you personal advice, but these are kind of the principles we would think about.
Sure. I think it depends on your overall assets. And
my gosh. Yeah. Like literally I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I need to invest this. How should I do it? When is this a long-term play? I think it might be because at this stage, I don't think I need to touch it. I could if I needed to. Yeah. I got 10 plus years. I can afford to be relatively aggressive with this money.
Absolutely. Full steam ahead. Don't let off the gas. And just know that, hey, we revisit this in the future.
That's why I love talking to Justin too. He reminds me all the time that we always think, okay, you gotta make your investment portfolio more conservative as you get near retirement. He's like, well, if you retire at 60, 65, you're hoping to fund another 25 or 30 years. So it's not like you're going to need all of that retirement portfolio the day you retire. You could take a small percentage maybe and put that in something fixed income, something safer, bonds. But the rest of it is still a long-term play. You've got 10 years before you should need it.
Yeah. And you're in that exact spot, Reid. I mean, you've got 10 plus years, it's game on. And as it gets closer, and if you're taking that approach of, hey, I want this to reimburse me for those Medicare expenses, then it becomes a little fun money account. You've put nothing in this account compared to the value that it's going to be worth from now. And so it's like, cool, if it dips 10%, whatever, it's going to come back next year. All I'm pulling is my Medicare. What is that? 20, a couple thousand a year. Boom, done. So amazing. Yeah, it's really cool.
And I think we also did say, the withdrawals from the HSA are tax-free as long as they're for qualified medical expenses. But if you get to age 65 and you're like, I don't know, you don't have other medical expenses, I can't imagine, but you have the ability to just withdraw that money.
That's
correct.
It
doesn't have to be for a medical expense, but then it's taxable.
It's penalty free once you reach that age. So once you kind of cross that threshold, you can say, okay, well, shucks, I've overfunded this thing, which I don't see how that would happen. But if that's a fear that's on your mind, if you're, I just want to take the money out and take a big trip with my family. Sure. It would be treated just like a taxable account. What you pull out would be subject to income tax. Again, you've not paid any money on these dollars as they've gone in. So it works just like a 401k or a traditional IRA. You've put the money in, you got that tax deduction. Remember, on the front end, it was an above the line deduction, but it never really hit the line because it wasn't considered part of your income for that year. It was deferred right off the top. And so you've not paid taxes on the dollars going in or on the growth. So now when you pull it out, yes, it would be subject to tax. So aim to keep those deductions, and you can also reimburse its expenses for lifetime. So you start keeping those receipts.
Well, yes, you can reimburse
yourself for the expenses. So right now, Reid, if you go to the dentist, you better save that receipt.
Right. I know.
And that gives you the ability to reimburse expenses down the road if you needed to.
And from what you just saw on the IRS website, it looks like there's no time limit. We were originally thinking it had to be done in the same year, but it looks like there's not a time limit.
It's easy to get confused because people look at that contribution time limit. It's like there is a limit to get the money in there. I can't go put $100,000 in this account right now. However, if I've been tracking my receipts, from the time the account was open, I can go forward and say, okay, we've got, $100 to the eye doctor, this, that, add it up, put those Band-Aids on there. People love to pay themselves back for the Band-Aids.
Stop that.
Yeah.
$4.99. I know they're more than they were a couple years ago, but still.
You pay cash.
Ray, awesome. That was, thank you very much. It's a great topic. I wish everybody could have access to an HSA. It is a triple tax advantaged savings vehicle, and people, we'd love to educate more people on them.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't educated 20 years ago when I had one, and now I am. So I'm using it differently.
That's good to look at. Yeah. It helps you breathe easy. Yeah.
What I missed back then.
But you can still say, hey, my Medicare is free now. Roll
yeah,
forward.
That's right. I'll be
let the
covered
growth
for a
pay
couple
for
years.
the Medicare. That's a deal.
That's right.
I love
it. Awesome. Thank you so much. So covered HSAs, contributions, how to, the benefits, the values down the road. So that is phenomenal. As financial advisors, we manage and rebalance portfolios, but the unique values that we work to understand our clients' individual goals so we can have these types of planning conversations that are so personal and unique to each individual. Thanks again for being with us, Ray.
Thank you.
Thanks to our editor, Noah Davis, and thanks for listening. I'm your host, Reid Trego, Money Pig. We're out of here. Have a great day.
The Money Pig podcast is hosted by Reid Trego, a financial advisor at Goodwin Investment Advisory. This podcast is intended to share information and perspectives, but should not be interpreted as legal, financial, or tax advice. The opinions shared by participants are not necessarily endorsed by the company. Goodwin Investment Advisory is regulated by the SEC, and the company operates in compliance with applicable securities laws and regulations.